Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to a very special Etims podcast, the second in a week, no less, unprecedented. But there has been a special circumstances. As anyone who listened to Ralph and I's previous ramble, we were hoping that Monty C. Burns could join us to talk about the whole collective meeting with Celtic, which was this Monday. We are still waiting on Monty C. Burns. The last time we heard he was having a fight with EasyJet. So we really do hope that he can join us as soon as possible to get the inside track. But in the meantime, I'm glad to say Ralph has rejoined me. Welcome back, Ralph. Good evening.
How you doing? You okay?
I'm fine, thank you. And a very surprise, non-surprise guest, Shocker Rooney, the man from the North Carolina Celtic Supporters Club, has deemed to walk away from his grandchildren. Shame on you, Hector Bandido. Nothing better to do with your time than join us Etims podcast.
Good afternoon, y'all. Let it be said, noted, they're fast asleep just now, having a wee afternoon nap. Both my wonderful grandson and granddaughter. So they're having a wee nap. And we're 5 hours behind you guys over here in terms of time, right? So it's early, it's kind of afternoon here, so it's all good.
Excellent. And the newest member of the CSC doing well?
Yeah, she's great. She's 4 weeks old today. Ellie, and she's fabulous. So her and her brother, who's just over 2, Nicholas, they're both great. All good, all healthy, mum and dad, kids, everything great. So we're over the moon.
Excellent. That's really good to know. And as I say, pleasantly surprised that he turned up. I could not believe it when I joined the chat and there's Hector's smiling face beaming back at me. We have all been enjoying your good morning, y'all picture postcard photos you've been taking, Hector.
And by the way, it's not Photoshops, Desi, to be fair.
No, I believe you. I totally believe you. I'm just going to say thanks very much. It makes us all feel really good.
For our 2 or 3 listeners who kind of listen in regularly, mugs that they are. So yeah, we're over here. It's a lovely wee town in sort of eastern North Carolina on the riverfront. Lovely wee downtown, a lot of history, but there's a lovely walk you have, and there's 2 rivers there in the front, and everything's really nice. So I love my morning walk, and I say maybe low teens, 21, 22 in the morning. Lovely. Have you started seeing some familiar faces to say howdy to in the morning? Well, you know what? You know, people, you like to chat, don't you, Desi, when you go on holiday, don't you? And it is a holiday. And I love nothing more than saying morning, y'all, and making friends and acquaintances. No high fives just yet. I saved that for late on a Friday night and a Saturday night.
Lovely. Okay, right. So that actually remind me of something, so thanks very much for that. Some other good news, folks, for Sully Shamrock up in the Highlands. He reported back, we were discussing his dog recently, he's reported back that Stella is well on the mend and back up walking up the house, so well done, Stella, the official Etims mascot. So that was good. Is
that what Ralph drinks the podcast, Daisy?
Stella, remember, Caroline Black Label is still his favourite tipple, the number 1 drink of choice in the Stoke region. Right, and Hector, this is you're talking about our 1 or 2 listeners. Remember George? We've not heard from George recently, but I can shockingly say a very warm welcome and thank you very much to recent subscribers to the YouTube channel, who include Scott Barr, Football is Life, Glasgow Rebel, Marky, Owen McGill, Horace Branson, and Kerry McCaffrey. That was me just looking back over the last few weeks. So Shocker Rooney, folks, you're very welcome. Thanks very much for joining.
Is that us get double figure listeners now?
We may possibly be needing 2 digits. It's getting rather worrying, but there we go. So welcome, folks. As always, everyone, our L4 special listeners, always great. Everyone, thank you very much for listening. We are gathered here tonight, as they would say. There's going to be quite a few musical references as we go through tonight. So we are gathered here, which was meant to be a special podcast to talk about specifically the Celtic Fans Collective and the board and all over the disasters. Monty C. Burns was due to join us half an hour ago, and he's still fighting with EasyJet check-in, apparently.
He can't make it, does he? He's
Oh,
messaged he can't make it.
So apparently something's that. So there are suspicions, right? I'm going to be brutally honest with his listeners. There are suspicions that Monty C. Burns is going for the head of business operations job at Parkhead. Right? there have been those rumours, and
Yep.
he's not been on our WhatsApp group very, very much this week. That's all I'm going to say. Right? So if anyone is around the Parkhead or Lennoxtown region and you see a shifty looking wee guy for Lurgan, let us know, because there's a good chance he could be jumping the
I mean,
dike.
his name's not Neil Lennon, to be fair, right?
It just comes from the next straight down for Neil Lennon. So that could be very interesting to see if Monty C. Burns ever rejoins the Steve Tim's podcast or starts getting interviewed with Jerry McCulloch about Monty, why are you so good? That sort of thing.
What does the C stand for? What does the C stand for?
It would stand for something else then, and it would be collective.
Right. Be cash.
So please bear with us, folks. Apologies. We will try and have to muddle through. Monty was the Etims representative with the Celtic Collective, so we're wanting to get his inside kind of perspective. He was not at the meeting, but he's got a lot more direct chat with the people in the collective, and he'd have got immediate feedback and stuff. We'll try and muster through what we can, what we've heard, what we know, and then try and guess. I'll be brutally honest, we'll try and guess where it all goes next. So let's see where we go. Right. So Hector, Ralph, just a quick recap, and I may jump a bit. I've checked the chronological order of these things, so nobody needs to phone in to complain or whatever. Right. So, for example, starting with the musical reference, Talking Head CSC. Well, how did we get here? Right. So Celtic failed to get into the Champions League again. Right. Terrible transfer window, lots of embarrassing things, etc. Transfer window. We then failed to get into the Champions League again for the 5th time in a row in the qualifiers. There's a Sun leak. There's a letter to the board. 420 signatories end up joining up. Loads of other individual fans echo their request to join such a movement. So as an actual movement starts to get built up regards the annoyance and resentment of inefficient Celtic board. There's a leak to the Sun, which really annoys so many people. The Celtic board, somehow in their wisdom, decide to put up divisive stadium barriers within the stadium to block people from being together in the stadium. So that also created division physically and mentally, so to speak. So then the Celtic Collective, the North Curve, various other people started reaching out to each other and decided to have a meeting in Graces. So Hector, you attended that initial meeting. Yeah. All right, so then they started with what can we do to make our voice heard and try and have an influence? They come up with the idea of the 7 questions, and then they come up with the idea of the 12th man. Celtic fans are the 12th man. What activities could we have? Late entrances at Rugby Park, proposed silences during the game, etc. Then we move on a wee bit. Then suddenly Celtic's in the Europa League. Suddenly the sales are starting to get impacted. Celtic start to pimp tickets left, right and centre, try to get some interest. The big Adidas Trefoil launch, they try and smuggle that out at 10 o'clock at night and it falls in its arse and they had to recoil it. That was like the showcase launch of the year meant to be, so I dare say the sponsors are not happy. The board then agree to talks, but the collective, Hector, correct me if I'm wrong here, the collective are not initially invited to those talks.
No.
Thank you. So then the other representatives, which include like the Celtic Supporters Association, the Disabled Celtics Association, various other, we can list them later on. They actually volunteer, the North Curve and the boys. They volunteer to give up some of their seats to accommodate the collective being represented. Ultimately, there ends up being 21 fan representatives at a meeting on Monday night. Prior to that, the Celtic Collective announced that all silences from that point will be postponed in respect to Celtic agreeing to discuss matters with the fans. Everyone's going in with an open outlook. Well, we get an answer to the 7 questions. The meeting happens on Monday, and I believe someone quoted the other day, before the meeting had even finished, they started to leak the minutes. And then there was a minutes fiasco, Ralph, whereby the minutes had not been signed off by both parties. and suddenly there was a whole, we'll release 3-minute minutes, and then Celtic released 3-minute minutes, and then finally the minutes were released. And it's all been a bit, what's happening? So,
Yeah, you missed one thing. You missed one important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just one, but it is quite an important one.
Yep.
You missed the Saturday night 9 p.m. Celtic statement of 1,000 words of waffle, which poured flames, which poured fuel, which poured of what we've done everything great. It's, financial fair play rules, complete lies from them. And even people who were kind of, I think, would admit they're quite on the fence with things about the board. They just kind of got on with it. That even angered the more placid, dare I say, Celtic supporters to be really annoyed with that Saturday night release. But it's quite an important thing just to add, wasn't it?
No, you're right. I did mean to add it in. You're right, as I said, that's not a comprehensive list, because you've got weeks of anger on top of that, etc. So you had been to the Gracies meeting, Hector.
Yep.
I know we're going back a wee bit, but from your perspective, was it a collective? Was it a joined up professional perspective of we're going to do this correctly, clinically? We're not going to just be a rabble. It's going to be clean.
Aye, but I think I said that in the previous podcast. You've got to remember, this just came from a starting position. So it was a case, I think that 9 o'clock release on the Saturday night, that was the sort of icing the cake for anger. And at that point then, one or two of the main groups reached out to as many as they could, both official supporters groups, supporters clubs representing tens of thousands of members, and also, bearing in mind, the online community is vast now, right? Mm-hmm. Reached out to everyone, I think, including ourselves. So the turnout in person in Graces, I didn't attend the meeting in Grace, apparently was significant, but we had also on the call supporters from all around Scotland, England, Ireland, wherever, America, Australia, all over Europe. So the actual turn up was incredible. So from a starting position, it was chaired really, really well. People set out some of the concerns, and the concerns were ones that, thinking back, I know time moves on quickly, but thinking back several weeks, that we all kind of raised about frustration and the transfer strategy, lack of communication for the board, the Fairhurst report, all of that stuff, and the board just no one engaged or explain anything. So that was the starting position, but it was a free floor. So what was good about the meeting, there was nobody holding the sort of virtual mic, if you like, and saying and driving it with their agenda. It was nothing like that. It was, right, who wants to come in? And I think the consensus, well, it didn't last, like 4 hours, it was maybe an hour and a half. The consensus was, right, we'll try and bring it down to a steering group, which makes sense, right? So if you think there's over 400 bodies represented, so that's 400 bodies times tens, hundreds, so that get into the tens, hundreds of thousands perhaps. And it was asking for people who could come forward with different skill sets. So what that meant was people who could be organised or used to organising protests. So you've got the FAC group who did a fantastic job holding the Scottish Government to account, amongst other things. But there's also people who were talking about corporate governance, corporate law. So with such a wide fan base, such a wide turnout, there was one or two that had really good expertise in that. So at the end of the call, they said, right, who would like to join the steering group? And I think there was something, and I'm laughing, not in a bad way, but there was something like 80 people said, be great, I think we'd like to get involved. So I think that was a surprise if you think about it. So suddenly there's 80 people, right? So that involves conversations and what could you bring and all that? What's your skill set? So then I think they narrowed it down to about 23 or something. And I think even then, 23 is probably still a high number for a steering group. Probably about 7, maybe 9. But however, this isn't a professional body that's got 20 years experience working together. This is starting from scratch. So at the end of that, I think they'd emailed all the groups to say, look, we're going to have the protest at Rugby Park. We were one of them. They contacted about the 12-minute silence. They'd asked Celtic for a meeting, released the 7 questions that were agreed, which I'd mentioned a few minutes ago. And as usual, the club did nothing, right? But ticket sales days, as you mentioned, for Europa League, number of reasons. 1, people were fed up. And 2, people were protesting about things. And they're feeling as if the fans are just a cash cow, because every second week or every week, there's a new merchandise tweet or email arriving, isn't there? Asking you to buy the next Celtic thing. So the cash cow thing's one of the big frustrations as well, with the best part £80 million in the bank. So a number of things are mooted. Things were kicked around a wee bit about the silent protests. A lot of people don't agree with that, right? And that's everyone's within their right. A lot of people don't agree with having a boycott of matches because it's people's lives in some cases. You know, they've maybe not got a wider family and Celtic's everything to them. So to find a balance, I think, is a challenge. And nobody said it would be easy. So I think having the silent protest initially, but one of the key things was to meet with the club. So the club's seen the ticket sales going down, merchandise sales have hit the floor. So the Celtic shop and the new one in Queen Street, the figures are so down because people are just not spending money in merchandise just now. They're so fucked off with what's happening. So the board, seen the figures, as you know, Desi and Ralph, what did they do next? Let's try and get a meeting with this group. So they reached out to all the different bodies, the Disabled Celtic Support Association, Irish one, CSA, the affiliation, FAC, Celtic Trust. But they didn't include the Celtic Collective, which is a relatively new body. It was only just set up, wasn't it, a few weeks ago? However, all of the ones I mentioned are part of the Celtic Collective. So I think they've then gone back to the club to say...
Almost all of them.
All of them, apart from one who attended the meeting, which we're going to come to. I think it's called the North of Ireland Celtic Supporters.
Correct. Yeah.
There's two people from that who are not part of the collective, or not part of any of the conversations, and somehow the board invited those two people to that meeting. Now, scratch your head a wee bit in that one. Anyway, the different bodies went back. They're all in the collective, so the board have now started to include the collective in that correspondence, because that in effect represents the larger body of people. So that kind of takes us, I think, up to the meeting on Monday. The collective agreed, as you said, Desi, to put the protests on hold because the club have asked for the meeting to go over the points raised, and that took us to Monday night's conversation, if that makes sense.
Yep, lovely. That's us bringing it up. So what we're going to do for a wee minute is just going to pause here for a wee second, right? So I'm going to read, so you just highlighted, I think it was 21 people, supporter attendees, and for anyone who's playing catch up, from the club we had Mike Nicholson, CEO, Chris Mackay, CFO, John Paul Taylor, Support Liaison Officer, Mark Hargreaves, Head of Safety and Security Operations, Kevin McQuillan, Head of Commercial Operations, and George Campbell, Head of Legal and Governance. Ralph, you have been to a few meetings at Celtic Park. What's your experience, before we get to the actual meeting content here, what's your experience of what did you expect to happen compared to what actually happened, the actual being there at a formal business meeting at Celtic Park?
I can't speak for the one on Monday, but what I would expect from the lineup, 21 people representing the support and a half dozen people representing the board, is that they would have sat at opposite ends of the room. You would have had the board on one side, maybe with a table with their names next to each other, and you heard the support sitting around tables like a kind of school assembly. Looking through the minutes, think I've kind of backed up my own theory there, because it seems to have been just a couple of people from behind the board desk talking to a couple of people from behind the audience desk. I might be wrong, but that's what I've seen before, and I think that's what they would have done it. And again, it's a kind of looking up to get your point across, but you're not going to get that in that circumstance.
Yeah, so I did hope that Monty could have made it, because I did have a few questions for Monty in respect to what was the collective's approach pre-meeting, as in that they agreed an approach, would it be funneled through specific people for specific questions, were they going to target all of the questions in a general sense, or were they going to be specific? Like, again, I know the Nicholson and Mackay must go seemed to be an underlying demand that was never going to get met, kind of idea. What were the goals? Was it just the 7 questions in general, that idea? What were the expectations? Was it just to kick off? Was it to kick off the conversation and look to have further conversations, or was it a be all and end all? Except, was it What was the attitude? Was it kind of open, anger, confusion, conflicting between them when you read the minutes? Again, I'm not really sure. And then, Ralph, I was wondering, and again, this might sound really stupid, so apologies if it does. I know Celtic, well, it should not sound stupid because I'm about to say this was Celtic driving the narrative, Ralph. I was going to say, would it not been better for the fans to try and insist on a neutral venue, the classic? You should take away their advantage and actually have it in a neutral venue, or is that just never going to happen? Really, it's never going to happen in reality.
From my recollections, there was always a window in the big room behind the guys on the board, which means that you're still kind of squinting, you're still uncomfortable when you're facing them. It's like a job interview where the guy interviewing you has got everything behind him, and you're kind of inferior almost immediately. I can't say if that's what happened in that meeting, but they come up with the 7 questions. They kind of put their cards on the table, and there was never really going to be any open discussion. The board had the questions, they had a way of dealing with it, and these are experienced guys at that level. And once they've said their bit, there was no kind of plan B. There was no, if he says that, we'll ask this. If they declare this, then we can counter with that. I think the reason for that would be the collective's a kind of new thing. It's 3-4 weeks old, and they'd got the chance to talk to them, and they thought, this is our concerns, let's raise them. But the best we can hope for is this is a starting point.
Right. Let's step through this, right? Right, Hector, I'll come back to you. Right, yeah. I'm looking at the minutes, I'm looking at the agreed minutes, right? So we're at the very start. The welcome, Michael Nicholson. I'm not going to read it verbatim, don't worry, folks. But I'll try and get the key eyebrow-raising sections here, right? So underneath the welcome, Mike Nicholson opens the meeting, right, and says, the club have invited various reps, blah, blah, blah. The club is keen to make progress. Mike Nicholson acknowledged that the club is not in a place where we want to be, and that some recent communications have not been well received by supporters. The club wants to find a way forward, Hector, which allows us to seek to address concerns while backing the team on the pitch. Right? So there's a lovely subtle emotional blackmail / dig at the fans straight away there, Hector, without actually acknowledging the club is not in a place where we want it to be, without actually not. It's one of those classic apologies, Hector.
Aye. It's like the club's not in a place you want to be. Well, why is that?
Exactly.
Right? So rather than, and here's the thing about what stood out for me throughout the minutes that released, and this is the full transmission that was shared by the collective and the club, which was agreed and shared out, and it's also on the Celtic website, was the lack of humility from the board. Now we get it, it's business, and many of us have worked with different boards at different times, various sizes, small companies, medium, whatever. And you know, there tends to be a degree of conversation within reason, openness at that level, and a bit of honesty doesn't go amiss, right? So if they're saying the club's not what they want it to be, it's not the collective, the Celtic supporters' fault. The club's not what they want it to be. That sits with the Celtic board, the people who are in attendance who are opening up the conversation, rather than say, yep, how about this as a starter for 10? We didn't get what we wanted this summer. We, the chief exec, head of finance, we hold our hands up. It was our fault. There's a lot of things that we know we've got to get right. A bit of humility. And we're going to work with bodies A and B to try and take on board lessons learned, listen to people, and from that, try and agree a plan so it doesn't happen again. What'd be hard about doing that? A bit of humility without giving specific detail.
Yeah.
It sounded quite simple, but it seemed to be kind of beyond them.
And that came through consistently, Ralph, from the minutes. In fact, the collective, I think, very late on, Daisy, I know you're going to cover everything. There was one guy mentioned, I think, who was talking about fan engagement, one of the 6 from the club involved, who appeared to get recognition from the collective as he had humility, He was listening to the supporters. He had an action plan in place to address some of the concerns. One of the 6 of the names you mentioned, not Mackay, not Nicholson, obviously John Paul does a great job as SLO. Not the guy Hargreaves. There's 2 at the bottom.
Kevin McQuillan, head of
Kevin
commercial.
McQuillan. So the guy he seemed to get quite a relatively positive response from the collective as he was listening and talking to them in, let's dare I say it, normal terms, human terms to people.
Yep. So okay, so that was the welcome. I know. Try and rattle through this as much as we can, but as Hector alludes there to folks, you shouldn't get a sense of the atmosphere in the room. Let's say it does not sound like a cordial, we're all in this together kind of thing. And my next musical reference would be Mike the Mechanics. We talk a different language when we're talking in defence, and that's the kind of tone I'm getting here. Ralph, right, so the opening comments from the supporters group, this is the minutes. It was noted that the collective represents a wide range of individuals and opinions, but that there is a united demand for change among the collective, including in relation to personnel, notably the chairman, the CEO and chief financial officer, the strategy and execution and the accountability of the Celtic PLC board to the supporters. And this is when we start to come into the business metrics, but we hope that Monty could go. The Celtic fan collective, Ralph, do not believe that the club is currently operating in a way which reflects its desire to be world class in everything we do. This has led to an expression of unhappiness at the direction and leadership of the club. When you have such vague metrics, Ralph, will you ever be held accountable?
That's kind of a phrase that has maybe come back to haunt the board. To be world class in everything you do is a hell of a statement, really, when you look at it. If you break it down, it's like, we're going to be the best, we're going to be the best at everything. It's not going to happen. It's just something you throw out there so the support feels quite good about it. What I thought was a wee bit naive was that the collective actually came and pretty much demanded that certain people on the board resigned. And yet, if you were to sit down and say, okay, why do you think they should resign? There are far more reasons why they shouldn't than why they should. You can't really base a business on emotion. Just because we get a wee bit fed up this summer, you can't say, right, that's it, you're all out. That kind of leads you down the path of, if you're upsetting somebody next summer, we change it again, or even the summer after that, or the winters in between. It's just nonsense. But Ralph,
it wasn't one summer though. That's the whole point of it.
5 in a row.
It's 5 in a row. If it was a one-off, or even dare I say it 2, I think they'd be this right. Okay, they could do better. Now it's 5 in a row. That there's a pattern. There's a clear pattern there now, right?
Yeah. Whilst by no way am I defending the board, and they have got it wrong several times over the last 20 years when it comes to qualifying for the Champions League, because ultimately that is where the money is for a club of our size and the league we operate in. All that kind of business should be done in the January, and we've said it on podcasts over the years. That should be done in the January. You should be planning for that. It shouldn't be a kind of last gasp thing, because if you look at players, they'll be thinking, well, I'll go there, but only if we get into the Champions League. And you can't throw together a cohesive unit in a couple of weeks to take on the champions of another country, no matter how bad they are. So that all does come down to planning. And I'm not entirely sure that's down to the board or down to the football management itself.
Well, I can answer that. That's my biggest bugbear. Right? Sorry, Daisy, but rather than waiting, you're probably going to come at this bit. So, this is the joint minutes, right? Supporter groups questioned the involvement of Neds. So, for those who don't know, it's not a Glasgow Bampot, right?
You sure?
Make things fucking done, man. It's a non-executive director. So from Celtic perspective, it's not people who do day-to-day operations. They'll attend board meetings, AGMs. So people like Dermot Desmond's a non-executive director. People like Desi's mate Brian Wilson. People like Richie's mate Tom Allison, who's went to school with Richie back in 1946, right? So people like them are the Neds. But just to finish this off, support groups question the involvement of Neds within the transfer process. Chris Mackay and Michael Nicholson confirmed that players trading above certain financial values requires approval from the Celtic PLC board. I'm reading this verbatim, by the way. With such approval thresholds are standard practice amongst business. Supporter groups questioned how this approval was sought, and Chris Mackay confirmed board members would be emailed. Think about this, folks. Board members emailed, I take it from Michael Nicholson / Chris Mackay, for final approval, but would be aware of the background in advance. So just put some context on this, right? So there's been a pattern throughout the summer, and we say the summer, we're way back to the start of June here, where Celtic, and Desi's, I know you're going to come to this during this conversation, the pattern appeared to be that Celtic were lowballing clubs consistently throughout the summer. And this wasn't us making it up. This was feedback from potential selling clubs to Celtic. And I think there's at least a couple of clubs come back on that, right? But the bottom trying to get is this. A lot of time it appeared to be 1.5 million, 1.25, 1.75 million was the low ball for players valued in the £5 to £6 million range. So my point is this. If the threshold is little as £2 million, hence the club being Nicholson, offering lowball offers of 1.5 million. So when the selling club receives that offer, they laugh out loud, go back to Nicholson and go, behave yourself. This boy's worth £6 million. Nicholson then has to go back to the board, the non-execs, remember, right? Non-execs, not day-to-day operations. Email them. Email all of them, or is it just Dermot Desmond gets emailed? To then get his or their endorsement on anything above that threshold. So say Desmond comes back and goes, right, you've offered £1.75 million. They want 6. Go back and offer £2.25 million. Michael Nicholson picks up the phone, goes back to, let's say, Go Ahead Eagles for talking sake, and say that offer we'll give you 2.25. And they hold fast like Celtic do when it comes to selling our players, right? No, give us 5 million this time. Michael Nicholson then has to get back and fucking email the board again, and Dermot Desmond, if he picks up his email, alongside running several multi-billion pound businesses around the planet, to then come back to Michael Nicholson and say, this is what you do next. Do think about that. Why they say that our transfers seem to take weeks and weeks and weeks before they fall on their arse. So for me, that was the crux. This is what they said the club do. They being our execs and the board, how they operate. If that's not antiquated and completely wrong, what is?
So
It's
very
so
well
much
put.
antiquated. It's a kind of step backwards. If you take your mind back to when Strachan got the job, and with Craig Bellamy on the squad, we had a chance getting Bellamy in, which would have cost a fortune, and Strachan went out and he got Boric and Nakamura for pretty much the same money, because the manager was given the money, the manager was given the option to buy or get rid or whatever. He was in complete charge of the playing squad. My question would be, or would have been, had I been at that meeting, what on earth do Nicholson, Mackay, and MDLs know about football or about football players?
That was asked.
Right.
That was asked in the minutes as well. Sorry, Desi, over to you.
Yeah. Right. So let's step back a wee bit, right? This to confirm to everyone, right? So you'll get a select board to delegate data. I'm reading verbatim here. The board delegate operational responsibility to the CEO and the CFO, right? So that's Mackay and Nicholson. Executive directors are Mike Nicholson and Chris Mackay, and then non-executive. So this is where I think it starts getting interesting, right? Everybody starts talking about Dermot Desmond, and you raised a good point there, Hector, which made me think, time-wise, global clock, what happens if Dermot's in Sandy Lane playing golf in Barbados? Are we waiting till he wakes up to pick up his emails? Rather not even in Dublin. I mean, he might be anywhere in the world, so to speak. But then also a non-executive director is our good old friend Peter Lawwell. So we keep hearing Peter Lawwell's got nothing to do with the day-to-day running of the club anymore. This is a chairman, he's meant to organise meetings. But it turns out he's a non-executive director, so he's obviously part of this communication every time somebody needs to get an extra 100 grand to make a signing. Paul John Dykes at Axon was telling the story about we were buying Luke McCowan, and Mike Nicholson had to leave the room at 800 grand. And McCowan went home because he said, if I'm not signing for Celtic and they're not willing to pay $1 million, I'll just stay with Dundee. I'm not going to Hibs. And then I get called back because Mike Nicholson somehow had found 200 grand within the next hour. He did not have the power. The CEO of a £100 million company did not have the right to actually action a £200,000 spend. I mean, when you think about that, it's just totally embarrassing, right? But non-executive director, Peter Lawwell, Thomas Allison is a senior. He is a senior independent director. So maybe this goes to him alone. We don't know because we did not get clarification. Sharon Brown's also a non-executive director, been there for 9 years. Tom Allison's been there for 24 years. Peter Lawwell's only been back for 2 years, but he had quite a spell before. And then we'll get Dermot Desmond appointed to the board. When do you think Dermot Desmond was appointed to the Celtic board, folks? I guess
94.
Well
Fergus was
done,
in. Yeah.
well done, 1995, Ralph. I was going to say, for the same length of time as Grange Hall ran on TV, there's a quiz question for you. 30 years, 30 years Dermot Desmond sat on that board as a non-executive director.
If I remember rightly, he underwrote everything that Fergus McCann put in, and that was kind of the part of it.
And then we'll get good. Then we'll get Hector's Madrid food critic friend Brian Wilson, celebrating 20 years as a Celtic non-executive director this year. God bless him. Always good to be topical. And then we'll get Brian Rose, Monty's friend from Apple Services, who recently joined a couple of years ago. And then we've got a company secretary who's also been at the club for over 20 years. Right. So let me go back to right. So this is where I think this is where it starts to show how this was never going to work. Let's be brutally honest, how this was never going to work. Supporters' concerns were raised about things like the world class, various things, right? And then the statement that Hector mentioned earlier, the statement came up. Michael Nixon then addressed the statement released on Saturday, the 7th of September, which was intended to address some issues. They acknowledged the statement was not well received, right? I'm paraphrasing here, right? But this is verbatim. Mike Nicholson reminded the Celtic collective that they do not speak for all supporters, and he confirmed that some supporters defended the club statement. I mean, when you cannot stand up and say, we fucked it, we apologise, we fucked it, without going, well, maybe you're in the wrong too. It's just... And then
lack of humility, Daisy.
That's what I'm saying. But then when asked why there was no signature on the statement, he basically declared this was normal practice, and the statement was released on behalf of the board. So basically, this fuck off and don't bother us.
Why did it not say the Celtic board at the bottom of it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, but normally you would get signed by chief executive or an actual office holder would actually be the person behind that. I mean, even if it was the head of comms or whatever, but somebody should have put a stamp on that. You know what I mean?
That's amazing. If Nicholson stood up and says to me, well, you're not speaking for all supporters, there are some that agree with me, I would just say, right, name 10, and he'd fall on his arse.
No, he'd mention the board.
It's just a phrase. It's simple, right, name 10 of them.
Aye.
Right, so this is also where I think it starts getting interesting, right? Mike Nicholson confirmed the club are happy to discuss, but some issues, including the removal of directors, are matters for the board and shareholders, right? And you'll see throughout this, there's loads of talk. Hector, I know you've read this a few times, Ralph. There's loads of talk of we have learned. We will learn our lessons. We are listening. We feel your pain. We will hold internal reviews. So see if you are going to constantly fuck up and then review your own work and then fuck up again. Does that not maybe tell you, Hector, that maybe your maybe reviewing your own homework fuck ups is not the way to go? Maybe it's time to either change or get an independent review in.
Or who's signing off in the review process? If it's a Mr. P. Law and a Mr. D. Desmond, who are more than comfortable, right, as long as the dividends are coming in, the profits being made, if they're signing off to say, all is good, gentlemen, keep up the good work, right, that may well be the case. It's probably what's happening. But your point, it's an obvious thing. An independent body. When I say body, don't make it something like I cast 1,000 people, right? 2 or 3 people in business say, look, this is a fundamental part of how Celtic as a football club and how the business is run, is ensuring the trading model. We're fucking great at selling, guys. You get half of it right. You get the best bang for buck. You do a great job at selling. Not got a problem holding off the best fucking deal. When it comes to buying, there's a recurring theme here. So we've looked at other companies, other clubs of a similar size. Let's forget the guys getting millions from Sky or billions from Sky. Let's look at clubs in, say, Portugal or the Dutch League or Brugge. We talk about what's their model of a similar size club in terms of transfer budget. How do they do things? But that will never happen. Never happen.
And to be fair, there's a few examples of what I'm going to say here from the collective. So fair play to them. And this is just the first example, but a similar lines going through it. While many of the fans rep had met with the club on various occasions over the years, it was noted that this was a new approach and a declaration by supporters that we can't revert to business as usual. And this also gets highlighted when the club starts talking about internal reviews. And basically the collective fair play said, this is the same old shite. We are not accepting the same old shite of we'll get back to you. And I always call it the long grass thing, mate. We'll come back to you. And Ralph, you've been championing that Janefield tunnel thing for years. That's still, we're talking about Fairhurst in this meeting. The Janefield one never went anywhere. And do you remember this you're talking there, Hector, you remind me? Remember Gordon Stratton's review? What happened to that? Remember he was doing a review of Gordon Stratton? What happened? That disappeared.
Is there not a fan survey that they're about to, according to the minutes, they're going to publish it this month? But the questions
they'll release.
Yeah.
No, sorry, apologies, Ralph. Yeah, so they had this to clarify to everyone, we may have mentioned this before. Celtic conducted the fan survey around about the same time as Falkirk, I believe, and Partick Thistle, and maybe Dunfermline. And those 3 clubs have announced all of their findings. They've taken action. They've organised forums. They've invited people to various places, and they've listened. They've basically listened and they've put actions in to try and improve relationships, facilities, whatever. They're trying to make the respect the fans a lot more. Celtic came back with, we need to have an independent review of the findings or the results of this survey. Basically, this survey does not say what we want this survey to say. So we need to find a way to put these metrics in a way that makes it sound as though things aren't as bad or unappreciated as it could be. The classic, we're listening when we want to listen. So they've said that they will publish initial findings by the end of October. But I think that'll be very high level and you won't get to drill down on much. Right, so Hector, we come to you, resident tactician. Question 1. What is the club's long-term footballing strategy? Mike Nicholson confirmed that the club's strategy is clear, Hector.
Ooh, that's a big good.
I underline the word clear, Hector. The club aims to be a world-class football club in everything we do. Hector,
Richie, they're still saying it. They're still saying it. It's not an old thing. They said it Monday, right? This isn't a throwaway line for 5 years with Peter Law, but every pound the club brings in, we're reinvested in the club. Certainly don't fucking say that anymore. So this world-class thing isn't the fans. This is said again by them on Monday, right? So, Desi, it's that...
They have invested in Barrowfield. It's
20
now
million.
£20 million. It's brilliant, and the players are coming in, and they're all going to be Champions League level. I don't believe it for a minute, but that's what they said.
So world-class and everything we do, right? Let's just try and compartmentalise that a wee bit, right? So if we're world-class at trading, selling players, I think we're pretty good. I think this is the strange thing. I think overall we tend to get good value for selling players. So I would actually say to them, you're good at that. Are we world class at buying players? We're pretty shite. We're the opposite of world class. We're fucking dreadful. Are we world class at bringing through academy players? We're fucking dreadful. Are we world class at bringing in quality coaches from the best we can possibly get to be world class, i.e. world class coaches, to coach the youth of our academy teams to make them ready to play first team football? We're fucking dreadful. Have we got a world class stadium? No. Have you got hot water in the south stand, Desi? You and the Tartan Shaw Brigade? Any hot water yet in that south stand of yours?
I don't know. I just pull my tartan rug up towards my neck these days. I don't even go to I just piss myself to keep myself warm these days.
There you go. Right. But listen, the stadium. Look at the nick of the stadium. Right, a world class that. The south stand. What is it? 50+-year-old now. The south stand that can't be replaced as long as we're playing football in the Scottish League. But we Fergus managed to build 3 big fucking stands when we were £1 billion in fucking debt all the years ago. So we're world class in very little. So if we're world class in very little, we're not world class. So don't fucking insult us by saying we want to be world class. Don't. And he's just done it again on Monday. It's just embarrassing for him, actually.
Right, so Hector, well done. You expertly ticked off all of those items, almost all of the items that they've touched on. There is the next one. Ralph, just a quick question. Are you aware of anyone that's on the fans forum at all?
The fans forum.
It's not a quiz. The quiz is coming later, by the way.
No, you're right. I was looking down the list. I saw a couple of familiar surnames, but I didn't see the people that I used to go to the meetings with.
But the reason
I don't know if it's sons or whatever.
Well, the reason I asked that is because Mike Nicholson then goes on to say the strategy is communicated via the club's annual report, the fans forum, and right. So this is where I think you get a wee interesting touch. People in this pod will know I always talk about a head must roll. Somebody's head must roll. I suspected in the last podcast with the business operations position being opened that maybe John Paul Taylor was getting kind of placed either to take that role or to be the scapegoat. But then Mike Nicholson says the club's head of football operations, Paul Tisdale, presented to the fans forum on football operations. So I'm wondering, Ralph, I remember going to, and they said Paul Tisdale was also authorised. His recruitment was signed off by Brendan. So I'm starting to wonder, are they going to try and push the football issues and recruitment issues onto Mr. Tisdale? Because he gets a few mentions in that report.
I did notice that recruitment is what they call data-driven or data-driven, whatever way you pronounce it in the singular. The problem is that you're looking at, it's the equivalent of playing that football manager or whatever it's called, FIFA, and you look at the scores that they've got on that. So you bring them in and it fits all that. But these are not the players that are gunny, to coin a phrase, do it on a wet Wednesday in Stoke. You don't know what the personalities are. You don't know what their background is. You don't know what their family is. You don't know anything about them. We don't have a recruitment section that just goes out and watches games, watches players, watches how they react. And this is why we seem to have got lucky, granted, and it's what Hector says, we can sell players, but it's we're getting good money for them, but it's not really a high turnover. We'll bring in 50 players and maybe sell 10 of them and make money. So that's 40 that are out the way.
See the world class thing. Sorry, see the world class thing. It's just on your saying there, Ralph, because I'll forget because I'm old, right? But the world class thing also should it should always apply to things that we know we can't buy the finished article for 100 million. We know that. Nobody's stupid and naive enough to think otherwise. But there's nothing stopping us being world class at getting world class scouts and world class data, world class sports scientists in the building. So there's nothing, world class coaches. There's nothing to stop that, to be the very best version of you. And I think that's all of us are really asking for. Not just tick a wee box, then forget it. The fans will no bother their shit again. Be the best version of you can be. And that's things we can be better at. And I think that's a big part of the frustration, isn't it, really?
Yeah, right. So we start to move on to the whole player recruitment, right? The player recruitment questions, right? And then, so Hector, when asked if the club had identified what went wrong during the summer transfer window, Nicholson confirmed that an internal process of review is ongoing. Fucking no chance of that, bringing up Ed. And it will focus on what went right and or wrong. And so that might be that might be a rather unbalanced, I would say. And examine this against, let's say this, Hector, right? So this is a classic, no, like you watch those movies like kind of courtroom dramas, and they've got to, the prosecution and defence, they have to share discovery. And basically, if one side's got something they don't want the other to see, they basically send them boxes and boxes, too much information hiding in plain sight kind of thing. That idea. So listen to this. This made me grimace, this, right? When asked if the club had identified what went wrong, they would have an internal review to see what went right and or wrong, and to examine this against relevant factors, Hector. Factors including the player's personal career objectives, the selling/buying club's aims, agents, taxation (brackets), Belgium and Germany tax systems, how Belgium and Germany tax systems compare to the UK as examples of the variables at play, amongst others. You might remember about 3 months ago, I tweeted the Celtic board will send a note saying, "Fuck off, yous lot don't understand modern football. Please leave us alone and go back to your Mayflower curry dinners." And that's basically what that says. Yous can't comprehend. It's basically a few good men.
But what it's also done, once more, is shown up for how unfit for purpose they are. The things they just mentioned there, are they unique to Celtic Football Club when it comes to buying a player? Or, guess what? Does every other fucking club in Europe have the same challenges to deal with and gets players signed? And really, them putting that out actually undermines their own fucking argument for how stupid and not ready they are to do what they're doing. Right?
And sorry, this is a quick lad. In case anyone has not read this, they actually at one point cite Brexit as one of the reasons for difficulties. Brexit actually, as I mentioned, because we are tied in with the English league now. That is actually one of the reasons. Right, so Ralph, let's go into performance, right?
How can they possibly blame Brexit and all those little things where you need to do this, you need to do that, when they made money off Moussa Dembele for Fulham? They obviously just looked at Fulham again to see if they get another striker and get your boy Osmond in. What the players will do, that's just nonsense. The man's an idiot. Sorry.
Ralph, let me give you an example. Go ahead, Eagles Sports Director Mark Von Hintem on Celtic not signing winger Jacob Breum. This was our number one target, remember. The transfer wasn't even close. The gap between what we were asking for and what Celtic were willing to pay was simply too big. The amount we asked for was very realistic and in line with the market, considering how easy things went with Ant-Man and the Rangers dealings. So Rangers did not have any European complications to deal with, right? But let's move on to performance, Ralph, because it gets even worse. Mike Nicholson noted the performance in the Champions League last season, as well as a number of trophies that have been won as evidence of the club's performance. A representative said the nature of Scottish football means Celtic have a licence to play in Europe every season, and one of the reasons for Celtic entering group stages was due to our rivals' European performances rather than our own. Nicholson disagreed and pressed on whether he felt results in Europe were satisfactory. Mike Nicholson felt they were, referring to Celtic's qualification for group stage football in 19 out of 20 years. So, Ralph, you can ignore the fact that you have failed 5 times in a row to qualify for a £30 to £40 million Champions League. You've got group stage football 19 times out of 20. Be happy with that, Timmy, and shut up. What do you think?
Again, I'm not sure if anybody in the room pulled him up on it, but to call it European group stage football when one level guarantees you like 30, 40 million pound, and the other one, if you make the final, you might lose money in the end, is absolute incompetence from a guy that's running a company of that size. That's a guy that doesn't even look at the budget. That's a guy that thinks, well, everybody's happy if we're all getting the away trips right up until Christmas, and we might even get a knockout game after Christmas. The income to the company is vast in the difference between the two tournaments. And for him to say that is absolutely pathetic. I wish I was there now.
Yeah, right. So by the way, folks, we're still on question one, right? So this is question one.
Is this a 6-part podcast, by the way?
Right. So it might be part one of two. Right,
Sorry, Monty was in a worse mood than I was.
Exactly. So in fact, okay, Hector, this is something I know that is a big thing for you, right? So I think I'd really like to cover this. Discussions also centred around the question of whether the club's strategy is accurate insofar as it refers to the creation of UEFA Champions League players. Chris Mackay highlighted some of the club's most successful homegrown UEFA Champions League players and the role that both coaching and facilities at an academy level has in player development, referencing the importance of the club's recent battlefield redevelopment. So there you go, Hector. You want us to give you a few hours and you can tell us all about those hundreds of wonderful Champions League players that we have developed. Take your time.
Well, the last point, I'll come to the last point you mentioned first, right? You mentioned Barrowfield, which was officially opened, I think, in the last month.
Yeah.
Right? And it was opened, was it 7 or 8 months after they sent a notification saying it was due to open around January this year. So there's one thing, right? But two, it's just opened. Hopefully it's a great success. But guess what? It's going to take a long time for any of the outputs from that to be successful or not. So that's years away, right? But back to your first point. So let's just have a wee think about this, right? So I think it's a bit early for Kobe Donovan because he's not played Champions League yet, right? He may become a player, but very early for him. So let's think about things. We've got Kieran Tierney, be brought back from Arsenal. Kieran Tierney, what's he now, 28?
Are we talking Kieran Tierney phase one? Would Kieran Tierney phase two count for this argument? But
Possibly not at present, but definitely the first time round. We've got the young guy in midfield, Callum something. Is he 30?
Right. That young up and coming guy. Yep. Yeah. He could go places. Yep.
And we've got the even younger, the young whippersnapper, young James on the right wing.
The Ayrshire Whippet. Yep. That boy can go far.
So hold on, we've got Tony Ralston. Does he count?
That young right back. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Luke McCown, no, because we signed him from Dundee and he was more a bit part player in the Champions League. Let me think.
Maybe your goalkeeper. We're always producing good goalkeepers. What about one of our Champions League level goalkeepers we've produced?
David Marshall. What's David, 45 now? David, is he 45-year-old?
Tell Steve Clark to make their game.
Right, try to think who else have we got? Who else did we bring through?
Peter Grant, does he count?
Peter Grant. We bought Ryan Christie, we bought Stuart Armstrong. They don't count when they played Champions League. So hold on. Oh, he's no. Try to think. Was there somebody else there? Burchell. Mark Burchell. He was at school with Ralph. Mark Burchell.
Jerry Craney.
So basically, cutting to the chase, right? What we're saying is we've got 34-year-old James Forrest, 32-year-old Callum McGregor, and 28-year-old Kieran Tierney. We've got 3 players we've brought through Champions League level players over their career, right? And we're really struggling. Other than a guy getting a wee game here and there, we're talking about first team players here. No guys who are bit part players. No offence to Tony Ralston. Squad player's been great for Celtic, but he's not what you call an elite player. He's a very good player for us domestically, but no elite. So there's 3 players, I think. If there's any missing, please jump in and correct us.
You really are struggling.
Again, you're not getting the first time, are you? Right, okay, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to question number 3, because question number 2 was basically wrapped in, and this is gone with the minutes. Question number 2 was tied in with question number 1 at the official minutes. So we're going to number 3, Ralph. Accountability measures. Right? So Ralph, here we go. This is one that would have been good for Monty to be here, but Ralph, you can take this first of all. Supporters also highlighted the importance of independence, asking if it was believed all non-executive directors remained independent, notwithstanding their length of service. Chris Mackay advised that the club adopts the QCA code, which now requires all board members to stand for election annually at the Celtic PLC AGM. Mike Nicholson added that the matter of independence is also assessed by the board. Remember those internal review things? As part of the annual board governance process. He also noted that whilst he recognised some supporters believe individuals, non-executive individuals, have been in their role for too long, there was value in maintaining stability and experience in a sector as volatile as football, Ralph. So should we all be lucky that we've had these non-executives for so long securely in place for our lovely club, Ralph?
On the one hand, yeah, you're following the rules. They need to be re-elected. They need to do all this kind of thing. But they're kind of voting for each other.
Exactly.
That's it. So how about, instead of this, they all get to do a wee, I don't know, 60 to 90-second presentation to camera and tell us what they've done to deserve to be sitting at the table. You know, what do you do for Celtic? What do you do for the board? What exactly is your contribution? And if they can tell us, then very good, we'll all vote for them. But I can't think of any single one of them, with the exception of Lowell, with his ECA stuff eventually, that's done anything that's good for the club.
See for proper accountability, I know they'll jump behind with a PLC and they follow PLC rules, and nobody's saying they don't. They do. They clearly do, right? But for proper accountability, and we're a football club, right? We're not just a standard business. We take our customers, we're a football club. We've got 53,000 season ticket holders who keep the money churning in, year out, to make sure everything's paid. Why would it not be possible for season ticket holders to get a vote, right? So you've got shareholders, blah, blah, blah. But your point, Ralph, why not put them up in front of the season ticket holders like other clubs do, right? Whereas at Barcelona and other clubs, there's every 4 years they have elections to the club to do specific roles. And is it the socios who vote for the people they want in? What's to stop Celtic and the 52,000 season ticket holders having similar power, where they've got to present what they do, what they're committing to doing, how we hold them accountable, and put themselves up for election to do certain roles? What's hard about that?
You know what's interesting about that? If you look through the minutes, they talk about the things that kind of back up what they're doing with other clubs. West Ham and Manchester United were mentioned. But see, when it comes to something that would actually move the club forward, that would actually get a result, for want of a better word, they'll not even consider that. And that would be a brilliant idea.
If you wanted to cite 2 English clubs to discuss matters with, surely West Ham and Man United at this point in time, no disrespect to West Ham and Man United, surely they're no 2 clubs that you are looking to engage with as pinnacles of their environment.
They're finding an example that backs up their argument instead of looking to improve something. Honestly, reading 8 minutes, I'm not sure they weren't written by the same people that wrote Yes Minister.
My point was this, right? My point was this. So if it comes to someone to say, right, there's 3 people up to become the commercial director, for talking's sake, a 4-year deal, and say it was 3, person 1, you say, right, over the 4 years, I want to be valued on, I expect to double our commercial income in the next 4 years. That's what I'll be marked against. Richie may come in with something slightly different, me something different again. We put ourselves up. They're holding people accountable then, aren't they?
But see, this is where you start getting into the grey area. So we had a discussion on air before we come on regards objectives and KPIs, and business perspective compared to fans perspective and real life perspective. So I was saying that example there, Mike Nicholson cites 19 out of 20 seasons in Europe. What's your problem? He just sees Celtic Europe target reached. That's his target every year, objective every year, Celtic in Europe. The fact that Celtic almost by default get into Europe every year, that's by the by. He's hit his business target. The fact that we don't go anywhere in Europe, that's not my problem. My target is to get us into Europe. That's fine. So when you're talking there about like the commercial director, etc., they're not on the board. This is like the non-executives are Brian Wilsons and that. These are the people that are signing off transfers as far as we can gather. These are the people that we should be. So the non-executive directors, how are you going to hold? Like, so again, let me. I've taken some notes earlier, right? I did take notes for this podcast. Hold on. So I did take a note. Non-executive director. The definition of a non-executive director. Non-executive director will spend their time scrutinising business performance and offering strategic guidance and support to the executive team, right? So guidance and scrutiny. Generally, non-executive directors do not engage in the day-to-day running of an organisation. A non-executive director holds the board to account. They do not hold the accounts of the board. And that's what's happening at Celtic. They're in charge. They're basically in charge of the money, releasing funds for no reason. Why can the chief executive and the chief finance officer not take executive decisions? It's just madness, right? And then the chief executive officer provides overall direction and leadership for a company. They are responsible for setting the strategic goals and objectives of the organisation and ensuring, this is a key bit, and ensuring that the necessary resources are in place to achieve them. So if your manager needs that top striker, you make sure that money's fucking there.
That's fucking nonsense. They're not actually charged with achieving it. They're charged with giving somebody else a chance to achieve it. It's a big circle. There's no accountability anywhere.
Exactly.
Can I put a cunning theory out there,
Yes.
right? Because I'll repeat myself. I'll forget if I don't say it now, right? When was our last successful transfer window? Summer transfer window. When was our last successful one?
Well, right. So that's a very good question.
And I mean, every
how
player
are
that
you
came in-
defining successful? Because Mike Nicholson's idea
On
of
the
success.
picture, financial.
Right. So that okay. So when Ange came in, Eddie Howe, Ange knocked about. Ange came in around about middle of June, right? So still COVID was still kicking about, wasn't it? And he was just he didn't get in the UK for another week to 10 days, I think.
Yep,
So probably the later
correct.
part of June, Ange comes in, right? And it's a rebuild because of the mess up with Lennon and that the year before. So the chief executive at that point was Dominic Mackay, who was appointed in May. He'd hand over to Law retired. Chief exec kicked into the long grass, or so we thought. Dom Mackay was a chief executive. With Ange coming in, agreeing players, you're probably talking about Ange had to get to know the players. They were off in pre-season, got them back in the building. You're probably talking the early part of July when Ange was starting to get to know players, the gaps, who he wanted. So July and August, we then had our most successful transfer window possibly ever. In terms, I think they brought in about 8 to 10 players, like Sir Kyogo, Joe Hart for experience, Leila Bada, Juranovic, Giacomakis, every single one of them, bar one, contributed.
Did we not get three? Did we not get three in the last day? Jota, Carter Vickers, and Giacomakis.
And that's right. And the thing I'm trying to say though, Des, is that this wasn't planning from January earlier that year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was really July, August when he was doing it. And the thing was, the chief exec was Dominic Mackay. The window had, I think, closed a week, if you're lucky, and Mackay was sacked, right? Sacked, gone. Michael Nicholson, yeah. Nicholson's then appointed, was it interim chief exec, a guy who's a club lawyer, apparently a decent lawyer. He's appointed interim chief exec. A few months later, he's given the job. Then good old Peter comes back in the building as chairman. Now, the point, a long-winded way, was this. We had a chief exec who I think was empowered. I'm the chief exec. I'm making decisions, day-to-day operations. We're signing them. It's within budget. Has he put noses out of joint by going what they would see as rogue and went, no, you brought me in. I'm empowered to do this. The manager wants these players. We can afford these players within the budget. Done. They sack him. Is that part of the issue here? That they weren't happy with someone like him having the control of a normal chief executive to run day-to-day operations with the football manager?
He's set a precedent there, and that giving people a job to do and they can do it and do it well isn't the way that Celtic do things at board level.
Right. Again, okay. Like, we'll come back to that in a second, right? But you've just teed this up very nicely, Hector, for tonight's quiz, right? Well, we actually have a quiz just to keep everyone awake, right? And the quiz is: can you name all of the Celtic board's chief executives since December 1990? We got our first chief executive. Can you name? There has been. Just keep firing out the answers as you get them. There have been 7 chief executives of Celtic since 1990. Well done. He was the first 2 years, December 1990 to October 92.
Jock Brown?
Nope.
Scott Brown?
Nope. Keep going with the Browns. There's no any Browns. You've named a few, Hector. You've named a few.
Aye, well, you know Law. You know.
Right, Lowell. Right, how long do you think Peter Lowell? How long do you think Peter Lowell was chief executive?
17 years.
October 2003 to July 2021. Fucking hell. Peter Lowell, and then it was Dominic Mackay, who was July 2021 to September 2021.
There you go. That's even worse than what I said.
Did you say McCann there, Ralph?
Fergus McCann.
Yes, did you say McCann? Right. So Fergus McCann took over from Terry Cassidy.
Yeah,
March
that's right.
March 94 to April 99. So can you name the other 2?
Alan McDonald.
Well done, Alan McDonald. April 1999.
Invited us for Teen Biscuits. That's how I remember him. And we all told me fuck off.
April 1999 to September 2000, Alan McDonald. Can you remember the last one? Famous for wearing a Rangers strip.
Oh.
Alan McCoy.
Nearly.
It's going to be Ali Sunday, isn't it?
No. What's his name start with?
Ian
Bankier.
What?
Ian Bankier?
No, you got the first name right.
Oh, gee, I can see his face as well on the back page of the Mail.
Ian. Oh, Livingston? No.
Starts with M. He's a Mick.
Oh.
Ian. His second name starts with MC. Ian MC.
Hammer.
Yes, I will probably. He was chief executive from March 2001 to April 2003. He famously wore a Rangers strip and I think he managed to get onto the front cover of Daily Record once at a 5-a-sides, and his name was.
It was on the paper. It was in the paper.
That's what I'm saying. I think it was the Daily Record. His name was Ian McLeod. And then Peter Lowell, that wonderful accountant, stepped up to the mark, and he's been there ever since. Right, here we go. Right, so quick, let's move on very quickly. Hector, how do you intend to modernise the club structure to compete in Europe, and why are we consistently unprepared for qualification stages? Mike Nicholson stated that the club did not accept the premise of this question. In other words, fuck off. Further, Mike Nicholson noted that the club had appointed. Here we go again, right? Mike Nicholson noted that the club had appointed Paul Tisdale as the head of football operations, a new position for the club last year, and had also. And so this is I love this squirrel, right? The club had also created a new role of professional pathway manager for Darren O'Day, and now I'm paraphrasing, Darren O'Day, who subsequently fucked off to be second, I think it's Swansea, and the club had a big, after Darren O'Day left, the club had a wide-ranging, let's find the best guy for the job, and appointed Sean Maloney. So Hector, have you got confidence in that new structure there?
You know, the thing is, Desi, sorry, Desi, the thing is with that, right? One, knows the answer. That's the quick answer. But 2, actually, that's not far off a structure you would want if it was empowered. And what I mean by that is,
Yes, exactly.
we
exactly.
were
Yeah,
talking
you're
about
right.
the triumvirate of the football manager, director of football, if it's football operations, whatever, and the head of recruitment. That triumvirate working together with an agreed budget is actually how you would want the club to run it. And we spoke in previous podcasts about this. It also takes the pressure off the fucking board. Because they then go, well, the summer was a fucking disaster. Fuck what we do with us. We gave them, they're empowered, this is who they brought in. And it takes all the pressure off them. You think to yourself, have they not just got the fucking brains to just think about an easy get out for them to do that? Anyway.
What
There you
got
go.
me was we don't accept the premise of the question. So hold on, let me
How
ask
fucking
it
rude is
again
that?
a little bit slowly. But it's just their way of batting away, like I said. So you
Aye.
say, right, no, I'm coming back to the question, what have you got in place for this? Well, we don't accept. No, I'm going to ask you again. And you keep asking until they answer it.
But they wouldn't
That's
answer. Let's be honest. They wouldn't answer, right?
Oh, they would if you jumped on the table and hit them.
Right,
Aye.
so
That's the next
so
one.
right, so we're coming into we've covered most of this ground, but it really is worth. If anyone's listening, if you get a chance, go and read the minutes in full, because when you get to this section, it's this
Hilarious.
dynamite. It's this dynamite. JG, whoever JG was, asked if the football manager sanctioned all signings. Mike Nicholson confirmed that he did. He was then asked, why did the manager refer to some signings as club signings? Mike Nicholson shrugged his shoulders. Now, that tells you everything about the relationship between the board. I don't care how they try and paint it, the board and Brendan. I mean, absolutely horrible when you read that. I mean, madness, Hector, madness.
Desi, they've agreed. Michael Nicholson's agreed for that to be included.
Right.
And
so
the
that's
minutes,
an even better point. So is that another public dig at Brendan, do you think?
possibly. But it's embarrassing for Nicholson, because imagine that was any of us. Would you want the wider public to know you shrugged your shoulders? Is that not just quite childish and quite pathetic?
In a sense, yeah. But did you not notice when the collective said that we'll wait to see what the club puts out as a meeting, the minutes, we'll agree with them, or we'll put out our own? Was it a kind of deal breaker thing where they said, look, either you say it or we're going to say it, and it'll sound better coming from you?
So
So
if
in that sense, I
if
think
I'm
the
the media,
collective might have got that one right.
so if I'm the media, right, and they're going to go through
Uh-huh.
this, as you imagine, this is fucking, as you said, Desi, this is fucking manna from heaven for them. If I'm the media, the next press conference with the manager, which will be next Friday before we play a game at the weekend,
Yeah.
you're going to pick out 2 or 3 key points for this. One about the Sun article,
Yep. I'm
which
coming
they
to
said
that,
was
I think.
done. I know, so you come to that. And 2 is going to be that one there, shrugging the shoulders. You're going to say to Brendan, so do you have a say in every single signing, Brendan? And he's going to go, well, you know, he'll either say, "Got guys, it's done," or he might say, "Fuck it, aye, I don't." There you go.
I think he should
Anyway,
shrug his shoulders.
that would be funny, wouldn't it?
Classic.
That'd be quite
Right.
funny, wouldn't it?
That's what
Right,
I'm
right.
telling you.
Ralph, here's like this is we're heading towards the Sunstone in a second, but there was a last wee bit on this one which rereading it I think is very I ask a lot of hidden questions, I think, or questionable content. The meeting discussed the head of football operation, Paul Tisdale's role and the recruitment thereof, with confirmation sought as to whether a recruitment process was followed and if other candidates were interviewed, whether there was any pre-existing connection between the club's current head of football operation and any Celtic PLC board members, and whether the football manager was involved. Chris Mackay confirmed that the club spoke with several potential candidates that had been identified, but that there was no external recruitment policy appointed. Mike Nicholson confirmed that there was no family or business connection between the current head of football operations and Celtic PLC board members, but that individuals had crossed paths previously. Mike Nicholson confirmed that the manager supported the recruitment of Paul Tisdale following a consultancy period last summer. Chris Mackay confirmed that Paul Tisdale had worked on a project in which he analysed the club's game model with a view to mapping the club's playing style and system with a view to using data-driven results to identify players who fit the club's model. I just found that very strange, Ralph, that whole two paragraphs.
On the one hand, if you've got a job and you have to appoint somebody, then yeah, you're going to look amongst the people you know. You're going to look for somebody that you know who has the experience, who has the capability of doing that job. But when they talk about nepotism, because that's what it is, Gavin Strachan works at Celtic Park.
Yep.
Right? His old man used to be the manager. Any comment whatsoever about nepotism not taking place or family ties not happening, that's just blown apart. Mark Lowell was head of scouting for a while. His old man was the CEO. It's nonsense. I don't know if they're just trying to waffle away something that's obvious to everybody, but that's just nonsense. Of course it happens. But I wish you were just a wee bit less blatant about it.
Right. Exactly. I just think it's very interesting. We'll see if that has any bearing or it's just a red herring. Right, we're coming to the last section. I'm going to ignore, apologies folks, but I'm going to ignore the Fairhurst inquiry stuff because I think that is a bit of a squirrel, to be brutally honest. I think the main thing is the board's ineptitude during the transfer window and planning ahead. The Fairhurst inquiry can take care of itself, so I am going to spike that. I'm taking the executive decision. I am not going to phone my board members and ask them, am I allowed to spike this? I'm taking an executive decision. Hector, I'm coming to you with the last bit, the tabloid news story as it's called in the minutes. And I'm going to read this out because I think there's so much underlying in this, right? McGee raised serious concerns regarding the alleged leak to the Sun, and it was suggested that this was a grave breach of trust and professionalism. The club was asked to address this following the summer transfer window, which the football manager had commented on publicly. When asked why no formal investigation had been launched, Mike Nicholson noted that the allegation was based on an unnamed source allegedly speaking to an unnamed source at the club. There's a lot of speculation printed in the tabloid press. This is Nicholson. The matter has been discussed within the board and with the football manager, and the matter was closed. Chris Mackay said all board members had been asked about the article and there was no basis for further investigation. And this is the most interesting thing for me, Hector. Chris Mackay also mentioned that the newspaper source was a senior figure, which may not necessarily have been a board member. The football manager confirmed that the matter was closed in his next press conference. Mike Nicholson noted that the board understand the importance of confidentiality. The board understand that importance, remember. When asked why the club had not taken legal action against the newspaper, Mike Nicholson confirmed that the club would not take legal action in relation to speculation and said that the club was busy enough as it is. The collective reps argued that this approach was dismissive of a concern of fans. So Hector, I'm going to come out and ask you, do you think they're saying that was Brendan Rodgers who leaked it?
No, I don't think they are. Come on, say hello. Let's say hello. Right, say hello.
Finally, some sense on the Etims podcast.
Hello there.
He's stupid, and he's stupid as well. Two stupid people. Is that okay?
That's the Celtic board in the centre of the room.
Yes, that's right. That's you. So I would say, no, I don't think they are. I think they're trying to be their usual evasive selves, but they know who it was who passed the story on to someone else, senior, who then gave the story to a certain tabloid.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Do you not see the obvious absolute who wrote that answer? Right? You've got the unnamed source to an unnamed this, unnamed that. Cast your mind back a while when one of the Rangers were dying and they were buying players and they'd had offers in, and Lowell said, oh, it's an unnamed club offering unnamed millions. It's kind of a rhetoric they've got. It's a stock answer, right? I don't trust Rodgers any more than I could throw him in the street. Because don't forget, a long time ago, I was talking to a player who says, no, he's not gone to Leicester. And 20 minutes later, he was at Leicester. So I would take anything he says with a pinch of salt. What I can see there is a narrative coming from somebody that is obviously still got considerable influence in what's given out publicly or towards supporters or whatever. And this guy's been doing it for 20, 25 years. He knows exactly what he's doing. So, and plus it was in the sun, so it doesn't matter. Nobody reads it anyway.
Right.
Sorry,
So,
who are you saying? Sorry.
Right. Do you remember?
Yeah, was initials.
Do you remember when Peter Lawwell made that wee joke at a meeting and he says, "Oh, they've had an unnamed bid for unnamed
Right.
amount."
that was for
Unnamed.
Yeah,
Well, it's the
okay.
same
9
narrative.
million, an
Same
unnamed, from an
phrase.
unnamed universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one. It's the same narrative. It's
So you
just
think it was the same person
like
who made
you
that
said
unnamed
right
bid?
at the beginning. They're treating us like wee boys going to the
Aye.
fiddler, and we're not anymore.
Aye.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So, we're coming to our final. I'm going to end the minute review there because as I say, I'm going to drop the third stuff for now. Right. We're going to move on to haircut 100 CSC. Where do we go from? Where do we go from here? So Hector, there's going to this a wee note for the collective. Our representatives made clear to Mike Nixon and Chris Mackay that at this moment hold on, I mute Peter Lawwell there. Our representative made clear to Mike Nixon and Chris Mackay that this moment represents a turning point in supportive relations. We reaffirmed our commitment to pursuing structural change, transparency. Hold on. Structural change, transparency. There we go. Hold on. Accountability across all levels of the club's governance and operations. A reminder that our next collective meeting, Hector, will take place on Thursday, the 16th of October at Gracie's, Glasgow, starting at 7 p.m. So, next steps. Any idea what the next steps could be, Hector?
Well, for me, I think now this is where my whole thing. Now they've had the meeting. Now the club's reinforced publicly, including on their own website, how out of touch, just a wee bit, Ralph, majorly out of touch they are, as we've just dissected the minutes, their own words from Monday. There's now a baseline here, public baseline. So everything we thought about the board, but kind of second guessing, bit of common sense about things, I actually think it's been reinforced times 4, 5 now. How out of touch, how poor they are, how lacking in the basics of communication, dialogue, empathy, humility they are. So now you've got that baseline position. I expect to see things ramp up a bit. What do I think that? I mean, just my opinion. I don't have any idea at all, no insight whatsoever. What do I think it'll mean? So, the one thing the Celtic board, right, there's two things. Celtic board are obsessed with cash. Most boards are. They get that. Ours seem to be more so. The one thing I think Celtic board hate more than anything is negative publicity against them. But more importantly, negative publicity in European fixtures. They want to be UEFA's good boy books all the time, right? So I think the ideal time to strike as a support would be the next home European game when there's a multitude of tickets available. So if we're going to do something, I would do it then. What it might mean is stopping the game 2 or 3 times. Remember the game at Tannadice end of last season when the price of tickets for away games was scandalous and they threw the tennis balls in the pitch. See, to do that in a European game, not just once, but say 3 or 4 times throughout the match, and really fuck off UEFA, the referees, negative publicity, club fine. I think something like that would get a lot of the negative publicity to get what the fans are upset about and get the board shitting themselves a bit. But what I would say is it would make sense for me to do it not from the Green Brigade section or the boys section, because then the board would happily shut their sections down, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would be doing it around the ground. That's what I think would be a great way of doing it.
Couldn't do it for the main stand because we're too old. We've not got the energy.
You can throw your coffee flasks onto the.
We've not got the strength to throw our Drambuie cups at that far. We couldn't make it.
You've kind of made a good point there, right? The thing is, if you go back to the Dial season, after they died, and with that big blanket over the top of the
Top
bean
yep.
stand, right? So that was them saying to us, right, we're not going to sell enough tickets. There's no Rangers, so we'll cut it down. We'll turn some lights off, save a wee bit of money and all that kind of thing. The thing for us as supporters is we're one team, right? You know, we'll change our cars. In some cases, we'll change our houses, our wives, even the children go away. But the team stays with you all the time. That's your club. They know that. They know they've got a captive cash cow. We'll buy tickets, we'll buy tops, we'll buy shoes, merchandise, everything. As long as they know that we're going to keep doing that, they'll keep doing what they're doing. So if you're going to mount a campaign against them, start off small. Just don't go to the shop. Don't buy, to paraphrase John Brown, don't buy the pies. Don't go into the club shop before the game. And then gradually build it up. Don't buy the tickets. You know, maybe, the cup games. Don't go to them. And eventually that kind of thing will hit them because they'll need to sit down and say, hold on, why are people not coming to the games anymore?
Yeah,
Why
you're
are
right.
I thought you told me, I thought you told me
you're
these
right.
guys were in it for life.
I tell you why I
But
think you're right.
clearly we're not
I
anymore.
think
And we're
the
getting
nuclear,
older now.
the
We've got other
nuclear,
things that we can be doing.
the nuclear options to boycott, right? But you got to remember here that to me that's the final. That's almost your final card to play is the
Yeah.
boycott or not? Sorry, the
Build
boycott stroke
towards it.
not
Don't just
stroke
do it in
not
one go.
but stroke not the new season tickets, right? That's the nuclear and that. So you've got to think about this. That's the very very final card. Nobody wants to get to that point. You don't renew. You want to go and see your team, right? And back to my earlier point, for few people who have got families and other things to do, a lot of people don't. A lot of people Celtic's their life. It's what they live for. So to ask folk to give up everything in their life pretty much, that's a hell of a lot. So I think you've got to build and build and build and build. I'm no strategist, so I don't know the answers. But to ask for a campaign for 5 or 10,000 people perhaps not to renew season tickets, right? That's nuclear. It's then choosing the right next step, agreeing the right next, but try to keep the support with you. So it's not an easy balance. It's a difficult one, an easy bit of thinking, but just be mindful of we're not all the same, right? Got to think about that.
Well, that's why I couldn't understand this. Don't go into Kilmarnock until 12 minutes. A few yards went up. You spent all day getting there. You're not going to hang around for a quarter of an hour before you go into the ground.
But quite a lot
It's a
didn't go
whole
in. Quite a
day.
lot,
The whole
but quite
day,
a
a
lot.
10-hour day is based around that hour and a half. You're not going to do it.
But almost, I don't know if it was half the away section didn't go in. So it actually worked. You seen it in the TV. They were talking about it on Sky, weren't they? Why is there so many empty seats?
Right, we're
So
still
they
talking
got the
about it.
publicity. So the thing was, I was thinking about stopping the game in the European game coming up, maybe once or twice. Maybe it's a corner kick's due to come in, and it's the time this place stopped anyway. And see if I talk to the launched on it. I'm making this up. 100 tennis balls, different parts of the pitch. But if on the tennis balls, I don't know how easy or difficult this would be. I'm making the word hold on, Ralph, the tennis ball. But say it was a picture of Nicholson, Desmond, Mackay with the the red face, like the Ghostbusters with the
red
fucking
nose.
red thing. Aye, through it.
Clowns.
Could you imagine? It's European. It's going across Europe, and the board hate
Got it.
negged for publicity.
Right. Carter Vickers gets the ball facing his own goal, and we all hold our breath. Or is that just me?
Yeah, that's the Stella kicking in the looks.
That's the Stella. That's it.
Yeah. I was just lining up the classic Mahatma Gandhi. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. I'm interested. I did the one thing before I forget. Apologies, folks, for jumping back and forth. The Fairhurst inquiry. One of the things I did note about that was it's interesting how the Celtic board like to instigate independent reviews for other people's actions, not their own. I mean, it would be nice if they actually looked inwardly now and again. So that'd be interesting. So yeah, right. So let's leave it there. Hopefully Monty can join us one day when he's finishes his business operations interviews to see if he does not get a job, he may join us again. Hopefully it does, and we'll get some further updates, insights into the collective and where it goes next. The next meeting is the 16th of October in Gracies, and the very best of luck. I like to humiliate them, laugh at them. I mean, because they can't combat that. You can't combat that with inane phrases that mean nothing, like world class at everything we do. That crap, we should start getting people's focus on them. Some bad back Hector's idea there. All right. So it's just like for me to say thank you to everyone. Thank you. Sorry, Val?
A club like no other. Well, they got that right.
Yeah, well, true. Yes. So thank you for everyone for bearing with us. This is going to run and run. This is not going anywhere. As the collective have said, this was a disappointing approach by the club. This was a chance for the club to take a step towards the fans, and they've basically slammed the door in my face. So that was a shame. So we'll see where we go next. This left for me to say thank you to Ralph, first of all, for tuning in all the way from sunny Stoke. Thank you, Ralph.
Cheers, see you soon.
Yes, thank you. And all the way from North Carolina, Hector, and the 2-year-old member of the North Carolina Celtic Supporters Club. Thank you, Hector.
He's off. He had this talk about the board, and he went away in a kind of. He's a wee shouting, sack the board with a wee American accent.
We should say Hector's name on the video chat tonight is Sack the Board and all Ralph's mates, because Ralph did used to go to the lovely board meetings for the tea and biscuits back in the day. Hector and I never subbed. Never once. That loving cup. We always rejected it. We said no, thank you. Right. So yeah. So thank you guys. Listen, I'm going to leave everyone. We'll know of our sponsors gagging out. I was looking to get the audio from the classic Only an Excuse Celtic board. We're not to blame. Don't blame. It's not our fault. Gay's money sketch that everybody's seen. But while I was looking for that, I found from 1994. I'm going to leave you all with this quote from Only an Excuse World Cup Special 1994. A Celtic voiceover in the style of William McIlvenney, which said, "Now more than ever, Celtic needed men with nerves of steel, but all they got was men with necks of brass." And that was 31 years ago, and we're right back where we started, folks. So thanks very much for listening. My name's Desmond. Good night.